Hello, this is Terry Lauren, Industrial Hygiene Consultant. Our topic today is minimum requirements on how to set up a bloodborne pathogen program. Who needs a bloodborne pathogen program? Under the Bloodborne Pathogen Standard, employers having employees with exposure to blood or other potentially infectious materials must train employees annually regardless of the employee's prior training or education. The OSHA Bloodborne Pathogen Standard emphasizes personal protective equipment, PPE. The PPE includes gowns, gloves, eye protection, and masks. As the employer, you are responsible for cleaning, repairing, and replacing PPE as needed and must do so at no cost to the employee. What are the components of a bloodborne pathogen program? According to the Bloodborne Pathogen Standard, employers must make a copy of the OSHA standard available to employees upon request. Develop a written exposure control plan detailing the specific measures being taken to protect employees from bloodborne pathogens. A copy of this plan must be available to employees upon request. Identify the jobs and job classifications in which employees face occupational exposure to blood or other potentially infectious materials. What are the components of a bloodborne pathogen program continued? The employer must identify the specific tasks and procedures that may involve exposure to bloodborne pathogens and establish safe work procedures for performing those tasks. The employer must use engineering and work practice controls to minimize possible infection. Provide any personal protective equipment, PPE, that is required. Employers must also take measures to ensure that the employees are using PPE when necessary. What are the components of a bloodborne pathogen program continued? Provide equipment to ensure that contaminated or infectious material can be handled and disposed of safely. Provide yearly training by a competent person on bloodborne pathogens at the workplace. Make vaccinations against hepatitis B available, free of charge, to employees whose job duties put them at risk of exposure. People who decline the vaccination must do so in writing and have the right to change their mind. They must still receive the vaccination free of charge. What is required in a written exposure control plan? According to the OSHA Bloodborne Pathogen Standard, an exposure control plan must meet certain criteria. It must be written specifically for each facility. It must be reviewed and updated at least yearly to reflect changes such as new workers, positions, or technology. All of this must be used to reduce exposures to blood or body fluids. It must be readily available to all workers. The employer must regularly educate workers on the use of exposure control plan and where it's kept so it is available when needed. Here are some sample templates of bloodborne exposure control plans that are on the internet. First is the OSHA template. It is online, of course, free of charge, and it's a sufficient template for bloodborne pathogen exposure control plans. The state of Wisconsin has a template that is really directed at the school and academic situation, but can be modified and used accordingly. And my personal favorite is the state of Ohio and their bloodborne pathogen template.